Dr. Elena Martinez's hands trembled as she stared at the termination letter in her hands. The words blurred together through her tears. Immediate dismissal, unauthorized treatment, financial liability to the hospital. Just 12 hours ago, she had saved a man's life. Now she was being punished for it. The old man had collapsed right outside St. Vincent's Medical Center, clutching his chest as rain soaked through his worn clothes. No identification, no insurance card, no family to call. Just a frail body fighting for every breath. While other staff members hesitated, calculating costs and liability, Elena had made the only choice her oath would allow. She saved him. But in the sterile world of corporate healthcare, compassion had become a luxury they couldn't afford. The hospital administration saw only dollar signs and legal risks. They didn't see the gentle eyes that had whispered, "Thank you," as the old man squeezed her hand. They didn't know that this simple act of mercy would change everything. What none of them realized was that the homeless-looking stranger Elena had risked everything to save, held a secret that would shake the very foundations of St. Vincent's Medical Center. A secret that would expose the true cost of putting profit over people. To follow this incredible story of justice and unexpected revelations, join our community. Our goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes all the difference. Subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Elena had always believed that being a doctor meant putting patients first, no matter what. It was a principle that had guided her through medical school, through grueling residency shifts, and through 3 years at St. Vincent's Medical Center. But on that rainy Tuesday evening, that principle would cost her everything she had worked for. She was finishing her shift in the emergency department when the commotion started outside. Through the glass doors, she could see a small crowd gathering around someone on the sidewalk. Her instincts kicked in immediately. "Someone call 911!" a voice shouted, but Elena was already moving. She burst through the doors to find an elderly man collapsed on the wet pavement. He appeared to be in his 70s, with silver hair and weathered hands that spoke of a lifetime of hard work. His clothes were old and patched, his shoes worn thin. But what struck Elena most were his eyes, kind and intelligent, even as they clouded with pain. "Sir, can you hear me?" Elena knelt beside him, her training taking over. His pulse was rapid and irregular, his breathing shallow. Classic signs of a heart attack. "My chest," he gasped, his voice barely audible over the rain. "Can't breathe." Elena looked back at the hospital entrance where several staff members had gathered. She could see Dr. Harrison, the department head, shaking his head. Behind him stood Margaret Caldwell, the hospital administrator, her expression cold and calculating. "Elena, step away," Dr. Harrison called out. "We need to wait for the ambulance to take him to County General." Elena's blood ran cold. County General was 40 minutes away in good traffic. This man would die before they even got him in the ambulance. She looked down at the stranger's face, seeing her own grandfather in his features. The choice was no choice at all. "I'm taking him inside," she announced, already signaling to the paramedics who had just arrived. "Dr. Martinez, that's a direct order." Margaret Caldwell's voice cut through the rain like ice. "This man has no insurance, no identification. We cannot assume liability." Elena met the administrator's gaze steadily. "Then fire me. But I'm not letting him die on the sidewalk." The next few hours passed in a blur of controlled chaos. Elena worked with her team to stabilize the patient, performing an emergency angioplasty that saved his life. The old man's heart had suffered significant damage, but he would survive. As dawn broke over the city, Elena finally allowed herself to breathe. She was checking on her patient when Margaret Caldwell appeared in the doorway, flanked by 2 security guards. "Dr. Martinez, you're terminated effective immediately," the administrator said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Security will escort you out." Elena stared at the woman in disbelief. "I saved his life." You cost this hospital potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in uncompensated care. You directly disobeyed orders. Clear out your locker. As Elena gathered her belongings, she passed by the old man's room one last time. He was awake now, his color much improved. When he saw her, his eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," he whispered, reaching for her hand. "You gave me back my life." Elena squeezed his fingers gently. "Just get better, okay? That's all the thanks I need." She had no idea that this moment of compassion would set in motion events that would transform not just her life, but the entire hospital. The old man she had saved was about to reveal a secret that would make Margaret Caldwell's worst nightmare come true. 3 days after Elena's termination, the old man was finally strong enough to receive visitors. But the first person to walk through his door wasn't a social worker or a charity representative. It was a man in an expensive suit whose presence immediately commanded attention. Vincent Romano had built St. Vincent's Medical Center from the ground up 30 years ago. Now one of the most successful healthcare entrepreneurs in the country, he rarely visited the hospital that bore his name. But today was different. Today he had received a phone call that changed everything. "Papa!" Vincent's voice cracked as he approached the hospital bed. The old man's eyes filled with tears as he looked up at his son. "Vincent, my boy." Vincent Romano Sr. had been missing for 6 months. After a diagnosis of early-stage dementia, he had wandered away from his assisted living facility during a moment of confusion. Despite a massive search effort involving private investigators and police departments across 3 states, there had been no trace of him. "We looked everywhere," Vincent said, taking his father's hand. "Where have you been?" The elder Romano's eyes grew distant. "I don't remember much. I was confused, scared. I've been living in shelters, on the streets. People were kind, but I couldn't remember who I was, where I belonged." Vincent's heart broke as he imagined his father, one of the most respected men he knew, reduced to homelessness because of a cruel disease. But his sorrow quickly turned to rage as he learned the full story of what had happened. "They fired the doctor who saved you?" Vincent's voice was dangerously quiet. "She risked everything for a stranger," his father said. "When everyone else saw a burden, she saw a human being who needed help." Vincent stepped into the hallway and immediately called Margaret Caldwell. "My office, now!" 20 minutes later, Margaret sat across from Vincent in his executive suite, her usual confidence nowhere to be found. She had just learned that the homeless man she had refused to treat was Vincent Romano Sr., the founder's father. "You fired Dr. Martinez for saving my father's life," Vincent said, his voice deadly calm. Margaret's face had gone pale. "Mr. Romano, I had no idea that he was my father, or no idea that he was a human being deserving of medical care. Sir, we have protocols that nearly killed my father." Vincent stood up, his presence filling the room. "Protocols that punish doctors for showing compassion, protocols that put profit over people." Margaret tried to salvage the situation. "We can discuss Dr. Martinez's reinstatement." "Oh, we're going to do much more than that," Vincent interrupted. "You're going to learn exactly what it feels like to have your life turned upside down by someone else's callous decisions." As Margaret left his office, Vincent was already making plans. Dr. Elena Martinez had saved the most important person in his world. Now he was going to save hers. Elena had been unemployed for a week when the call came. She was in her small apartment surrounded by rejection letters from other hospitals when her phone rang with an unknown number. "Dr. Martinez? This is Vincent Romano. I'd like to meet with you." Elena's heart stopped. Everyone in the medical community knew Vincent Romano, billionaire, philanthropist, and owner of the largest network of hospitals on the East Coast, including St. Vincent's Medical Center. "Mr. Romano, if this is about the incident with your father, it's about much more than that," Vincent said. "Can you meet me at my office in an hour?" Elena's hands shook as she dressed in her best suit. She had no idea what to expect, but she knew this meeting would determine her future in medicine. Vincent's office was everything she had imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, expensive artwork, and an aura of power that was almost tangible. But when Vincent stood to greet her, Elena was surprised by the warmth in his eyes. "Dr. Martinez, please sit down." Vincent's voice was gentle, nothing like the intimidating businessman she had expected. "First, I want to thank you. You saved my father's life." Elena felt tears welling up. "I just did what any doctor should do." "But you're the only one who did it," Vincent said. "While others calculated costs and risks, you saw a human being in need. That kind of compassion is rare, especially in today's healthcare environment." Vincent walked to his window, looking out at the city below. "I built this hospital network to help people. Somewhere along the way, it became about profit margins and liability protection. Your termination showed me how far we've strayed from our mission." He turned back to Elena. "I want to offer you a position as Chief of Emergency Medicine at St. Vincent's Medical Center." Elena's jaw dropped. "Sir, I was just terminated from there." "By people who no longer work there," Vincent said with a slight smile. "Margaret Caldwell was terminated yesterday, along with Dr. Harrison and 3 other administrators who supported your dismissal. They forgot that in medicine, compassion isn't a liability, it's our greatest asset." Elena struggled to process what she was hearing. "You fired them because of me." "I fired them because they created a culture where saving lives is punishable," Vincent corrected. "You're not just getting your job back, Elena. You're getting the opportunity to reshape how we practice medicine." As Elena walked back into St. Vincent's Medical Center the next day, this time as the new Chief of Emergency Medicine, she felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. The staff looked at her with a mixture of awe and respect. Word had spread quickly about what had happened. Her first stop was the room where Vincent Romano Sr. was recovering. The old man's face lit up when he saw her. "I heard the good news," he said, his voice stronger now. "Vincent told me what he did." Elena smiled. "Your son is a good man." "He learned from the best teacher," the elder Romano said, with a twinkle in his eye. "You showed him what real strength looks like. It's not about power or money, it's about standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything." As Elena began her new role, she implemented changes that would transform the hospital's culture. She established a fund for uninsured patients, created protocols that prioritized medical need over financial status, and instituted training programs focused on compassionate care. But the most important change was intangible: the restoration of the belief that every life has value, regardless of someone's ability to pay. 6 months later, Elena stood before a packed auditorium at the National Medical Conference, sharing the story that had become legendary in healthcare circles. The Romano Protocol, as it had come to be known, was being implemented in hospitals across the country. "Compassionate care isn't just morally right," Elena told the audience of doctors and administrators. "It's good business. When we treat every patient with dignity and respect, when we prioritize medical need over financial status, we don't just save lives, we restore faith in our profession." In the audience, Vincent Romano watched with pride as Elena received a standing ovation. Beside him sat his father, now fully recovered and serving as a volunteer patient advocate at the hospital. "She's remarkable," Vincent whispered to his father. "She saved more than my life that night," the elder Romano replied. "She saved our family's legacy." After the conference, Elena found herself on the hospital rooftop garden that Vincent had created as a peaceful space for staff and patients. It had become her favorite place to think and reflect. "Quite a journey from that rainy night," Vincent's voice came from behind her. Elena turned to find him approaching with 2 cups of coffee. Over the past months, they had worked closely together to transform the hospital, and Elena had discovered that beneath the powerful businessman was a man of deep compassion and integrity. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had walked away that night," Elena said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "But you didn't," Vincent said, standing beside her at the railing. And because of that choice, thousands of patients will receive better care. Hundreds of doctors will remember why they went into medicine. And my father got to see his grandchildren grow up. Elena smiled. Your father mentions those grandchildren a lot. Vincent laughed. He's not subtle about wanting more. He keeps asking when I'm going to find someone special and settle down. There was something in Vincent's tone that made Elena look at him more carefully. Over the months of working together, she had noticed the way he looked at her, the way he always seemed to find excuses to check on her projects personally. And what do you tell him? Elena asked softly. Vincent set down his coffee and turned to face her fully. I tell him that I already found someone special, someone who showed me what real courage looks like, someone who reminds me every day why the work we do matters. Elena's heart began to race as Vincent stepped closer. Elena, these past months working with you have been the best of my life. You've changed everything, the hospital, my perspective, my heart. Before Elena could respond, Vincent's phone buzzed with an emergency alert. A multi-car accident was incoming, and they were needed in the emergency department immediately. As they rushed toward the elevator, Elena's mind raced with Vincent's words, but there was no time to process what had just happened. Lives were at stake, and that would always come first. The emergency department erupted into controlled chaos as the accident victims arrived. Elena moved with practiced efficiency, triaging patients and directing her team. Vincent worked alongside her, his business suit replaced by scrubs as he assisted wherever needed. Among the victims was a young mother who had been driving with her 2 small children. The children had minor injuries, but the mother was in critical condition. As Elena worked to stabilize her, she noticed something that made her heart sink. The woman had no insurance card, no identification, and her clothes suggested she was struggling financially. "Doctor, what are your orders?" a nurse asked. Elena looked up to see several hospital board members who had arrived to observe the new protocols in action. She could feel their eyes on her, waiting to see if she would practice what she preached. "We treat her exactly like we would treat anyone else," Elena said firmly. "Get her to OR 2 immediately." As the woman was wheeled away, Elena noticed Vincent watching her with admiration. In that moment, she realized that this was what love looked like. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but someone who supported your values and stood by your principles. 3 hours later, the surgery was successful. The young mother would make a full recovery, and her children would have their mother back. As Elena emerged from the operating room, she found Vincent waiting for her. "The board was impressed," he said with a smile, "but I wasn't surprised. You never cease to amaze me." Elena pulled off her surgical cap, suddenly feeling exhausted but exhilarated. "It's what we do, right? Save lives, ask questions later." "It's what you do," Vincent corrected. "You've taught all of us how to be better." They walked together toward the elevator, the hospital quiet now in the early morning hours. As the doors closed, Vincent turned to Elena. "Earlier tonight I was trying to tell you something important." Elena's heart began to race again. "Vincent, I love you," he said simply. "I love your compassion, your strength, your unwavering commitment to doing what's right. I love the way you've changed my life and the lives of everyone in this hospital." Elena felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have since that first day in your office, when you chose justice over profit, when you showed me that there are still people in this world who care more about doing right than being right." Vincent cupped her face gently in his hands. "Then marry me. Help me build something beautiful together, not just a hospital network, but a legacy of compassion that will outlast us both." Eleanor's answer was a kiss that tasted like coffee and hope, and the promise of a future where love and medicine could coexist beautifully. 6 months later, Elena stood in the same hospital chapel where she and Vincent had been married, holding their newborn daughter. Vincent Romano Sr. sat beside her, his eyes bright with joy as he held his granddaughter. "What are you going to name her?" he asked. Eleanor looked down at the tiny face, so perfect and peaceful. "Hope," she said. "Her name is Hope." Vincent appeared in the doorway, still in his scrubs from delivering a baby in the maternity ward. When he saw his wife and daughter together, his face lit up with a love so pure it took Elena's breath away. "How are my girls?" he asked, settling beside them. "Perfect," Elena said, leaning into his embrace. "Everything is perfect." 5 years later, Elena stood in the lobby of the Elena Martinez Center for Compassionate Care, the newest addition to the Romano medical network. The center provided free medical care to anyone who needed it, regardless of their ability to pay. On the wall hung a plaque that read, "In memory of all the lives that could have been saved, and in honor of those who choose compassion over convenience." Vincent appeared beside her, their daughter Hope's hand in his. At 5 years old, Hope already showed signs of her mother's compassionate nature, often insisting on visiting the children's ward to read stories to young patients. "Mama, tell me again about the night you saved Grandpa," Hope said, looking up at Elena with curious eyes. Elena knelt down to her daughter's level. "It wasn't really about saving Grandpa," she said. "It was about remembering that every person we meet is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's hope for the future. When we treat people with kindness, we make the whole world a little bit better." Hope nodded solemnly, then brightened. "And then you and Daddy fell in love." Vincent laughed, scooping Hope into his arms. "That's right, Princess. Sometimes the best things in life come from the hardest choices." As they walked through the center, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A single moment of compassion on a rainy night had transformed not just her life, but the lives of countless others. The old man she had saved had turned out to be more than just a patient. He had been the key to unlocking a future she never could have imagined. Sometimes, Elena thought, the most important people in our lives come to us when we least expect them, disguised as strangers in need of help. And sometimes saving someone else is really about saving ourselves. This incredible story of compassion, justice, and unexpected love has come to an end. If it touched your heart in any way, please leave a like and share it with someone who also believes in the power of doing what's right. New stories of hope and transformation are coming soon. Until next time.